to, I've been a freelance book reviewer for decades. I've also been an editor, so I've seen it from both sides. Uh, I'm also, I am in my, my early 70s, so I'm not going to be the hippest source of information either. So take that into account as well, right? Um, so, but let's start with Mackenzie's idea, which is to talk about. I mean, we could start with the idea that book reviews are not well remunerated. You're not going to be paid well for doing book reviews. So I hear Elizabeth completely. It's a lot of work, and you often aren't going to get a lot of money for it. And chances are, even if you move up to the top, even the money at the top is going to be disappointing given the amount of work that you're putting into it. So there has to be an element of madness in this, or craziness. There's Henry James talked about the madness of art. There is madness of book reviewing as well, I would argue, meaning that you have to want to care enough about books, care enough about reading, and have the time, right, to devote to doing the job the way that you want it done. But the idea that it's going to be particularly well remunerated, or even as you go up the ladder, I just think you're going to be perpetually disappointed. So I just have to put that issue of money is, I mean, book reviews themselves are struggling to survive now. You just saw that the Washington Post book world just went under. So a lot of these current book reviewing entities are on a shoestring budget or are barely surviving, right? They don't have a lot of money to spend to give to critics and reviewers. So that's just, yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I I pay about $50 a review, just so some of you may want to just sort of leave immediately for the arts views. I pay about $50 for a review. I will occasionally negotiate higher for longer book reviews, or book reviews you're doing two or three books. You're doing sort of a roundup, but 50 is what I pay, and I'm sure. And I haven't written for the Boston Globe for a while. They've been cutting back on their book review pages, but I believe they were still paying about 150, 125 for a book review, and that's what they were paying me in the 1990s. So the amount that they've paid has simply not gone up. So if you have that madness and you do want to review books and it's a craft or something that you're interested in, then let's talk about ways in which you can move up the ladder, or ways in which you can place your book reviews in entities or publications that will get you something. It may get you more interest. It may get from either publishers or from other book review entities. So one of the biggest things that I find as an editor, and I doubt that anyone here makes this mistake, but I will make it. I will make the point that there are a lot of reviewers who will pitch me reviews, and they will not have looked at the magazine. They will not have looked at the arts views. They will not have looked at the kind of book reviews I post. They will not look at how often the book reviews are posted and how they're written, how long they are, right? What's the kind of language? Who is the audience that this publication is posting for? And to me, that's an elemental mistake. So do research. Research where you want to place your material carefully, and start really doing some imaginative work. Well, how long are these reviews? Who are these reviews pitched for? Right? Also, look at the reviewers. Who, if I mean, you can Google them, you can, I'm not saying stalk them, but look and see who are the kinds of reviewers that are writing for these publications. Do you know of any of the reviewers? Do you know any of the reviewers, or know anyone who knows them? Because as you probably have already gathered already, book reviewing is a sort of a personal sort of business, meaning that editors often like to know their reviewers or know of them. So if one way of getting your foot in the door is to have someone who's already written for the publication write an email saying, oh, I think this reviewer is really interesting and does really interesting work. I think you should look at this review or look at their clips. Have clips ready at all times. Gather together the best material that you've written, and also gear those clips to whatever editor that you're sending them off to. And then, and so have them ready to go, because an editor is not going to bring you on board, particularly as you're moving up the ladder, unless they can see the quality of your work. So have clips ready to go. And again, have them geared towards the publication. Look at the publication. I was just talking to Chris. Chris sent in something about, a review essay. And, there's some publications and the review is 3,000 words. Well, you might want to cut the review down to 2,000 words if you want to submit it to one publication, because they don't do long reviews. They don't do 3,000 word reviews, but they may do a 2,000 word review, right? So again, look carefully at the publication that you're gearing it for. So when you send in clips, and also when you pitch. So when you pitch your reviews, look at what kind of reviews do they post? I mean, here's my idea of what a review is. I'll just give you what my feeling is what a review should do. Again, you may not agree. My idea of review is that it's an independent judgment, which is a verdict, which is backed up by evidence, reason, and analysis to back up what you see as being the quality or lack of quality of the book that you're reviewing. That's my idea. Now, there are editors out there, and I've argued with them. They see reviews as a means of being very positive reports about a book. They generally don't publish a lot of negative reviews. If you see a publication that doesn't publish a lot of negative reviews, then what do you want to pitch? You want to pitch reviews of books that you really feel strongly that you care about. You don't want to get into an argument with the critic if you submit a negative review and they say, well, we don't really publish negative reviews, or we don't like publishing negative reviews, or that author, we don't really care about, doing negative reviews of them. So again, try to gauge the publication, whether they're open for the kind of review that you're writing, either positive or negative or mixed, before you make your pitch. And again, if you have some sort of connection with the publication, even if you know a critic who's already written for it, then you can use them as one entree in order to make the contact that you think you need in order to get your pitch heard. So I'll go to Chris, because Chris, you said something in, right? So have I helped a little bit with answering the question, or what else do you what other questions do you have?
Well, I've never been paid for a review, but I've already retired from my university, so I accepted that right away. I'm not going to get paid. But I'm just sort of trying to branch out at this point, and I'm used to writing the book reviews for the Historical Society, and they limit everybody to 300 words, which is very short. Obviously,
which is really not a review. That's, to me, you can't do evidence and analysis in
right.
Even Sam Johnson, the great critic, would not be able to do that in 300 words.
Well,
you need more than that.
It has shown me how to make every single word count.
Oh yeah.
But I'm used to that because I'm a copy editor for academic books, and I know how to cut dead wood. But I decided to review this book about Homer because I kind of read up a little bit, but I'm not a classicist. So I looked up the reviews of this book called Penelope's Bones, and they were all reviewed by classicists. But then I thought somebody else might want to review this and give it some exposure, because I know a lot of feminists who might want, and writers who might want to read about this book, and it wouldn't pass before their eyes because it's from the University of Chicago Press, and you wouldn't find out about an academic book unless you were receiving emails from these UPs. So I took it on, and I was really floored by this book. It was so incredibly informative. So I had the problem, like you say, of being critical without, and
but I mean, if it's something you read and you really liked it, then there's no problem with being critical. I mean, you have to have the evidence and analysis. You can say that it's good, and now you have to, quote from the book and do your analysis, saying this is why it's so good, and that will then, that will generate excitement in the reader and going, that's really good. What I hear from what you're saying, though, let me just tell you, as a pitch to an editor, I love that idea. Classicists have reviewed this book, but actually, non-classicists who would really be interested in this book, that's why that's why you want this notice, why you want this review, because this is a book that should not simply be contained within the confines of sort of the classical world or people who are reading reviews by classicists, but it should be broader. To me, as an editor of a sort of general circulation sort of magazine, that would be a good pitch. Like, oh, this is so the onus on you, and I haven't read your writing. I'm sure it's great, but is the point that you're going to the audience, the readership you're going to be trying to pull in will not be the classicist academic audience. You're going to be having to do the difficult work of translating some of the academic ideas that are in this book, academic in quotes, for a more general intelligent readership. That's what you and but you in that way you're going to be the critic, is what I call the bridge. You're bridging that sort of academic, intellectualized. Sometimes people find it formidable and intimidating, and you want to open that up and write about it in a way that will then broaden the audience. And some editors for some publications would find that really exciting. Like, yeah, it's great to have a book that other people would not have heard of, but they will now hear of it because of you as you translate some of those ideas into something that would be of interest to a broader so this is also about the idea that when dealing with editors, you want to think of the right pitch. You just can't say, I've reviewed this book, I think it's really good, right?
Right.
You really have your pitch has to be, I review this book, or I'd like you to look over my review of this book, because I think it's so it offers some really valuable things to a it's an academic book that offers a lot of really fascinating material to a non-academic audience, not academic readers. That's why you want this review. You've overlooked something. And I would also say, if you can, there have been very few reviews of this book in the sort of book review press outside of academia. You'd be one of the ones having, you'd get this catch. You would get this for your general readership. And for some editors, they like that idea, you know what I mean, of having something that other people don't. Like, they have to come to this publication to see the review of this book. So what I'm just saying is that the way you pitch it is, think carefully about that as a way to, because I call it the hook. The pitch is sort of like a hook. You want to hook your fish. And
Yeah.
you've got to think of the way specifically how you can sell this particular review to the publication. Now, somebody
Right.
had a question in the chat. Uh, let's see, I don't
It's
know if
not
you can
right.
see it. Chris, is the book a debut?
No, she's a young academic, but this is the interesting about her, the author, Emily Hauser, is that she is a professor at University of Exeter, but she's also a novelist, and she writes those newish, from a woman's point of view, taking a classic author and turning like Pat Barker does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pat Barker wrote that famous trilogy about from the woman's perspective, the the slave, the woman slave. So the other point about this book that makes it so, I think, current is that the academic author is highlighting a rape culture, which I think we have going on now. So I'm sort of slyly saying, look, this is nothing new.
There's your newsy hook. There's your hook for, to sell this review, sell this essay
Mhm.
review. And I'd almost call it more, I don't know, how long has the book been out? Has it been out for a while, or is it
It's
really
been out about
recent?
a year, a year.
So I would call this more of an essay, you know what I mean? Essay with an emphasis on the essay and lack on the review. And to add a little interest to your editor, I would try to talk about some of the other, maybe quote some of the other reviews in some way, as if to say, well, these reviews said this, but I'm saying something they overlooked. And I assume you're talking about rape culture and its relevance would be something that maybe the others did not say, and that's what you're saying.
Right. And there's a lot of sort of cross currents. First of all, it's a cross disciplinary book, even though it's about Homer. It involves the latest DNA research of archaeologists, because this is new. The DNA research that they're finding with bones and teeth, and they can date things much more specifically now. So she picks up on all the archaeology digs. She links all that in. She talks about ancient history. It's all in there. So it's, I think, pretty remarkable book. And I quote her like almost a whole paragraph where she really singles out the rape culture. And this is something that a lot of people maybe don't want to read about, but feminists will read it.
That's right. I agree with your idea of trying to get it to feminist book reviews if you possibly can, or even some sort of political journals. I don't know, Dissent magazine, some sort of political journals that may like this sort of, as particularly the idea that it's a classical look, which is incredibly relevant now, and
Mhm.
about an issue that is not, that is cultural slash political and very timely.
It's also a sensitive issue because I don't know if you have been reading lately, like the New York Times singled out Bard College in New York. All these, not just Harvard and all these universities, they are getting sort of busted because they were taking money from Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh
And
yeah, no, yeah.
have you read the article in
I've read
in
some of it. I
the,
don't know if I've read all, but yes, I know that the
yeah,
Epstein web is quite
the,
extensive.
the Edge Foundation. And I think that Edge Foundation, which was his science thing that he funded, it has so many names of literary writers on, and it's still up on the web. Edge Foundation was his baby because he was interested in eugenics.
Yes.
His.
Yes.
So I kind of end the review with that, like little twist. Although I don't mention Edge or Epstein or any of that. I don't bring it to that
I mean, I think
point.
your instincts are all good. And again, I would go to political magazines, emphasis the essay over review. Maybe your hook is that this is a book that's more important, shedding light on today than the classicist critics gave it. And this is what my review is going to do. And that may excite some that may excite some interest. I have a question here saying, what about reviewing more, please? About reviewing what? Can you be more specific? Janine, meaning what specifically about reviewing? Because I mean, here we're basically talking about how can you place and move up the ladder? That's sort of what what do you do? I mean, what do you do when an editor turns down your stuff? Oh, just wanted to open it back up. Okay. We will move on. But anyway, I hope I helped you, Chris, a bit, with
Thanks.
your quandary. And it sounds interesting, and sounds like you've got some really interesting stuff there. So any other thoughts or ideas about, roadblocks that you've had when you've tried to place reviews, things that, that you want to talk about? Anyone else here? Deborah, Mackenzie, Elizabeth.
Question about what's the best timing. So I'm been pitching a review of a book that's going to come out in October to print places. Am I too early right now? I mean, the arc of the book isn't even available on NetGalley yet. But I think it's going to be a big one. So I kind of want to get out ahead of other people if I can. Um,
I'd say
when
go as early as you can go. Why not? Particularly if you think it's going to be a big one, but you're going to have to convince the editor may not have heard of it or may not be quite convinced it's going to be so big. So in your
mm,
pitch, you're going to have to say, yes, this comes out in October. It's not available in NetGallery, but I feel this is going to be a really big book. And it's really going to be of interest to your publication because I mean, I really, just don't say it's going to be a big book and you should like it. You should say, and it's really for you because your readers really get into it, or it fits into the kind of books that you've been looking at, or whatever the intellectual sort of attitude of your publication, liberal, conservative, whatever, it's really going to fit, right? Because
Yeah.
do the, I don't want to say do the editor's work, but the more work you do to convince the editor, oh, that this is something that really belongs in my this belongs in my online, magazine. The better the first off, it'll show that you're familiar with the magazine. I can't tell you
Yeah.
I how useful that is as an editor, how gratifying it. Oh, they actually read the thing, and so they know something about it. It really helps. But also, you're doing some of their work for them, by them thinking, okay, yeah, I think I'll hold a slot in October for this book because this sounds like it's going to be really good, or it'll be really interesting. So, yeah, and that's why it's always good. I say go as quickly as you can before someone else undercuts you, right? In other words, try to put your hand in as quickly as you can for doing the review. Explain why it interests you, why you think it's going to be big. So give it a nice little paragraph. And is this an editor that you're already familiar with or not, Deborah?
Pitched it a couple places already that haven't gotten back to me. No, actually, I did pitch it to an editor that I did know, and she passed on it.
Did she say why?
Well, I pitched a profile. I was trying to pitch a profile of the writer. I'm sorry, my dog is really hungry and is waiting. If
Oh,
you
that's
can.
okay.
So I pitched a profile of the author rather than a review, and she didn't tell me why she passed on it.
Because any information you can get. I mean, Chris mentioned earlier that like she submitted to a publication that said it's not, we like your writing, we like your voice, but it's not for our publication. Bang, you want to follow up to that. If they say if they get back to you and they say we like your voice, then that's a toe in the door. So you wait a little bit and then come up and say, well, you really like my voice, and sorry that this review didn't meet your requirements, but you really like my voice. And here's something that I think is really perfect for your publication. A new book, another book and use that in to hopefully, get the assignment and then build from there. And yeah, know when you want to do a review or when you want to do a profile. I mean, an editor's decision for a profile versus a review is very different. The criteria can be very different. So make sure that you're at a publication that is comfortable or does a lot of profiles or is interested. I don't know whether the author is well known or not. Some publications don't like to do profiles of authors who aren't well known, and some love it. They said, "Oh, we're gonna break this name in." So again, that comes to the idea of research and knowing. I know it takes a lot of work, but it's easier now online. In the old days, you had to go off to the library and go through magazines and newspapers and read through all of them. Now with online and with AI, I mean it's like a miracle. It's almost too easy. You can really start doing the research you need, but it will give you the tools to approach the publication in a way that they will take they'll take you seriously and your pitch seriously. So yeah, you're never too early. To me, you're never too early, but think carefully about your pitch because the editor may not be familiar with the book. It probably hasn't even been in Publishers Weekly yet, right? Or something, or a publication like that. So the editor may just have absolutely no. And it matters on the publisher. Is it a well-known publisher? Is it an obscure publisher? And that's another aspect of what you're pitching, right? When you're pitching a book from, Penguin, or from Farrar Straus versus Coffee House Press or a press that an editor may not have heard of. And that's a different kind of pitch, because then they'll go, well, we don't really know anything about this publisher, we don't know anything about the writer, we don't know anything about the publisher. Why should we have a review? So that puts the onus on you to say, but this is a really exciting book by an author who isn't really well known, and it's exciting because Got to have the because. You've got to give them something quick and snappy for the hook so that they'll go, yeah, that sounds sort of interesting. That sounds intriguing. Maybe I'll go take a look, maybe it's worth taking a look at that. And if they know you and you've built up a reputation, then it becomes easier. Oh, I liked, Deborah's earlier reviews and she wants to do X.
This meeting is being recorded.
That's great. Any other questions? Or a comment?
No, I just wanted to sit in on this because I don't know anybody else who does it.
I mean, has this been helpful, or is there anything else that you think I can do to? I can't help the amount of pay. There's just
No,
it's
that
not
I
going to
didn't even
happen.
mean to act like that was such a factor. I just thought it
Yeah.
was funny.
No, I think it. No, let me just say it is a factor. I mean, I think that it is hard work, and it is a lot of work, and it's time invested, and it's to me, since as a longtime book reviewer and someone who loves book reviews and books, it's important work. It's damn important cultural work. And with the end of reviewing, in the sense of its curtailment in newspapers and magazines and online, that is diminishing book culture. It's undercutting books. It's undercutting reading. It's undercutting, in a sense, the ideas and the level of debate that we're having in this country, because books are being undercut because we don't have reviewers. So to me, it's a disgrace that reviewers are not paid well. I'm old enough to remember how you could survive. Not just through book reviews, but I actually survived in Boston in the 80s and a good chunk in the 90s through freelance reviewing. If you reviewed for enough outlets, you got enough money, book reviews, I did theater reviews, I did some film reviews, I did some arts writing. I mean, I managed to cobble together enough to actually be able to survive, right? To pay rent. And those days, alas, partly just because everything has become so much more expensive, but also because reviewers are not being sufficiently compensated, are gone. But they should be. So I don't think it's a negligible, call for all at all that reviewers should be paid a dignified fee amount of money for the amount of work that they're doing for that plays such an important role in the culture. So anyway, sorry, the end of my homily there, but any other thoughts any things that I can help you with in terms of preparing for pitches or moving up the ladder of reviews?
Well, the venue that I was most recently reviewing for, I have to move away from, and he preferred to be pitched. He didn't assign, and the review appeared, just if this helps anybody else, he wanted the review to appear in the month of the publication date. So, it was my job to go to the press and say, I'm going to review this for so and so. Can I have a copy? And then all the rest of it. But so I don't know if that's normal.
Well, it's normal to generally want the book review. That's why I mentioned to Chris the idea that to emphasize essay over review. Generally, you want it within like the same month or within a month or 2 months of within the publication. It's not quite like a theater review where, theater will run for 2 or 3 weeks and you have to have the review in while the show's running. So that it's not, for books, you figure it, they have more of a shelf life. So they sit on the shelf. So I will, as an editor, will give it 2 or 3 months. But when you're talking like a year or around that, then that feels like you need more of a think piece approach, more of a commentary approach rather than a review approach. But wanting it in the same month is not unusual at all. You want it fresh and new,
Yeah. Which means basically trawling NetGalley to find, finding your niche, which for me is essay collections, and then trawling NetGalley and figuring out why I would want to review it, and then pitching.
Yes. But not why you'd want to review it. Why should the editor want to post it? Why would they? I mean, we know, you want to review it. That's one level. But the other reviewer, what you want to pitch to the editor is why would the publication want to run it? You've got to think of that when you go to, you can't say, unless you're a big enough reviewer, you can't say, "Oh, I think this essay collection should appear in your publication because I think so. I am, I know what I'm talking about." Well, those days are gone if they ever existed. Now it's like, here's why your publication should have this essay collection because it's illuminating, exciting. It says something in the world that your readers, meaning, will be interested in following. And also, if I may say, I'm going to add another element, which is, and it's a little more newfangled, but when you do your pitch, also suggest you might be willing to do some social media for it as well. Because nowadays, when editors are posting online, they may ask you or want you to do a Q&A with the author if you like the book that they can post to help get out the review, or to get the news, to get the review out, news of the review out. So you might want to say that you are savvy, you're interested in social media, and you're interested in, you care about, if it's a positive review, you care enough about the book that you might be willing to go to a local bookstore and talk about it, for example, right? That will get the word out not only about the book, but it'll get the word out about you. Because part of the problem with reviewing is that we don't really know reviewers. Who are they? What are they, right? But insofar as your community or the online readers identify, know who you are, then the more interested they'll be in your reviewing, and they'll be in what you have to say because they know something about you. They've seen you, they've heard you, they've asked you questions and whatever about the book and your taste. So that's a little different now, but I do think that critics should feel, I don't want to say make themselves celebrities, but you should in a sense get out there and make it known that you are reviewers and that you're a good reviewer and you care about reviewing and authority on reviewing, and get a following, people who follow you. That also makes you look very good to editors. If you can say, I have following on, I don't know, whatever social media you have, people following me, then that will look better to the editor. Will go, all these people are going to want to be reading your review. They're going to be wanting to follow you. I love that. I want to have that review. Let's see, Elizabeth, we've heard from Chris. Mackenzie, anything?
With what you were just saying, the following, like, what I feel like it's so relative and varies so much. What are you looking for, like a certain number threshold, or like what kind of substantiates that for you as an editor?
You mean social following, or? Well, I mean, frankly, I'll share my own personal feeling about this. One of my big disappointments as an editor, particularly because I have a whole lot of freelance reviewers, book reviewers, and also arts reviewers, is I felt that they would appear in the magazine and they would get out, word of the magazine, both of their reviews and also the magazine that they're appearing in, right? That the idea would be, I have a review in the Arts Fuse, and not only that, but there are other book reviewers, and here's their reviews, and they're really great. Well, that has not happened, I'm afraid. There's something about human nature. I mean, they're all tweeting, and they're all Facebooking, and they're all blue skying their own reviews. But they're not saying, oh, the Arts Fuse also has a lot of really good book reviews here, and they'd be really great for you to read. And I really like this book review. So I don't know about a threshold. I would be happy if I just saw someone who was interested in seeing that social media was a great way of getting the word today, about getting the word out about books and reviews, and that you were going to be part of it, that you would do your review, and that maybe when you appeared in the Arts Fuse, if you saw other reviews by other Arts Fuse book reviewers, you'd tweet them, or you would, you'd blue sky them, or you would, you get the word out about Facebook. In other words, if you find an outlet that you respect and that you like, then you're invested in it, in a sense. If you want to keep appearing in it and you want that publication to continue, then you have to help it, particularly in an era in which book reviews are having such a hard time surviving, and so many outlets are around for a few years and then they go under. I mean, the Arts Fuse has been around for 18 years now, believe it or not. 18 years. It's like a grandfather here. And that's unusual because there are a lot of other publications online that started out with me that are now long gone. So I guess I don't know about a threshold. I think attitude. I don't think you have to say I have 3,000 Facebook, followers who are eager to read my review, in your publication. But the idea that you say you're going to do that and that you're going to be part of getting the word out about the review and that you care enough about the book that you're willing to do Q&As and interviews about it, then, I think that editors would look very kindly upon that. You know what I mean? It would look good, like you're invested in the publication and in the review that you've written to get the word out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's super helpful to hear. It's one of those things that I wonder just like how it appears to other eyes. So thank you.
Well, I just think in the old days it was like, and those are the old days. And I don't know about good old days. I'm not sure. I don't really believe in any sort of paradisical old days. In the old days, you'd go to the editor, you'd give them their review, and they would publish it. And there'd be letter to the editors, and you barely get any letters, right? Generally. Nowadays, you're appearing online, so there are an enormous amount of comments, and you're in the online world where you're looking for attention, eyeballs for your review, and you want so you have to, unfortunately, given the time and the investment, you have to invest a certain amount of time in getting the word out. But if you get the word out enough about you and the book, and you become known as a book critic, a book reviewer, then it will make you look more attractive to other publications. You will have a track record. They will be aware of you, and so that will be really helpful in your career. Any other thoughts, comments, complaints, things that I haven't talked about? Let's see, is Janine still there? Do you have any questions or anything else about reviewing? I mean, I didn't see the session as about what a book review is. I mentioned what a book review was because that's what I think a book review is, an editor. But every editor's, I mean, Chris mentioned 300-word reviews. I mean, there are some reviewers, they don't want you over 500 words. There are many that don't believe that, that don't like 3,000 or, 4,000-word reviews. So you have to look for the publication and shape your review based on what the expectations of the editor and the publication may be. And it could be they don't like posting negative reviews. If you go through their pages and every review is positive, I myself find that incredibly boring. But if every review is positive, then there's your clue. Only pitch something that you really care about. Don't change your opinion in order to appear in a publication. There's no way I'm making that unethical suggestion. But if you like a book and you really care about it and you want to support it and get the word out about it, and you're going to explain to people why it's so good, then go to a publication that may just publish positive reviews. I mean, particularly a lot of smaller local newspapers, magazines, online outlets often see themselves as supporters and boosters of local authors or of books in general. And because books are seen as being under the gun, sort of books of being threatened, that's also bringing up that attitude of, I find somewhat patronizing, but well, we can only be positive because we have to help sell books to get them to readers to help the book industry, So, and that leads, I think, to a lot of not great criticism and a lot of great reviewing because it all becomes very supportive. To me, the best criticism and the best reviewing, believe it or not, I'll say this, I'll blow your minds. It's an act of love. Even a negative review is an act of love to the extent that you've spent the time, you've read the book, you have your standards, and you are contributing to the culture in that dialogue, your love of reading and writing in the book and to tell the truth about what you think about a certain book. To me, that's showing homage to the writer because you're taking it seriously, because it's not a snarky review. It's a thoughtful, negative piece why you think this book falls short. And in a healthy culture, other critics should be around to contradict, to offer a counter view, to say no, the book's not so bad and here's why. That's a healthy culture when you have a really good give and take. That's what we don't have now, but what Viva La Book Review is fighting to help create in its own small way. So, any other questions? I think I've, I mean, the problem is this, that I just don't, I actually was looking for material on relationship between reviewers and editors. And aside from that book, Inside the Critic Circle, I think it was in the references. I mean, I can hold it up here, but it's called Inside the Critic Circle by Philippa K. Chong, Chong. It's the only book that I found that had anything sort of on the editor critic criteria. And she looks at it from the editor's point of view as if the editor needs to do a lot of work on the critic. How do you bring the right critic to the right book? How do you make that marriage? How does that fit within some sort of ethical context? And it's an interesting section. I can't say I always agreed with a lot of it, but that book is the only one that I saw that had anything concrete about that, which is interesting, about what is that relationship. So I didn't have a lot of text to deal with, in other words, things to talk about written, because that's the only thing I could find, and I didn't have a PDF of the whole book to send. So, any other questions, comments? Has this been helpful? Are
yes.
people nodding? Yes, or
Yes.
sort of nodding, or okay, good. All right. Well, then I think I will end this now, unless someone doesn't have anything else to add. And I've helped people, and I see someone said super helpful. Okay, good. Also, I mean, I think you should have my email address or contact. You can if you have any other additional questions, things you want to ask, then email Viva La Book Review, and they will get it out to me, and I would be happy to answer any questions. But the relationship between editor and critic is, there's a personal quality to it. The editor has to sort of like you, your voice. But I think the onus is sort of on you, unfortunately, to do as much research as you can to know exactly who you're sending this thing to, your pitch, and to shape the pitch in a way that will appeal to the editor. And if you know anyone who writes for the publication, anyone at all, right? Use them as an entree, both as a reference and also to say, well, what is this editor really like? Again, this is easier in the old days. When I was starting to write for the Boston Globe and the Boston Phoenix, I could take one of the Boston Globe writers out for a beer or a lunch and say, what is editor X like? What do they like? What do they don't like? And so in that way, you have to try to do some of that legwork online, which may not be easy, but it may bear fruit. All right. Thanks so much for coming. I appreciated it. And you can send me any questions via email. And I'm glad it was helpful. Bye, everyone.